Yo! He really did it! He did it!
Given that the third season of Mob Psycho 100 has one of my favorite story arcs I've seen in a while, I want to explore what I think went into making this arc fantastic. To quickly recap, a magical broccoli was created in Mob City at the end of Season 2, which spreads its roots and gains attention from the Psycho Helmet cult. The cultists worship it as a divine entity. Now, Dimple takes advantage of this and creates a physical body of worship for the cultists that resembles Mob, seeking to return to his old ways. The arc primarily focuses on Mob's relationship with Dimple and his main goal of getting rid of the broccoli to free the city. With Dimple's help, the broccoli continues to spread, becoming a growing threat that affects every single character. Unlike most of Mob's other enemies, the fight with the broccoli and Dimple is not physical or world-ending, so it is interesting as to how they manage to keep viewers interested in the show. What happens is that Mob is challenged internally, rather than physically, because he values Dimple as a friend and attempts to resolve the conflict peacefully. The foundations laid in this arc is great because Mob will not go berserk for the millionth time to overcome this difficulty. We have already seen that, and we know that he will be successful if he does that. The challenge created for Mob is unique as there is no one to guide him through this problem, especially Reagan. The stakes and urgency created in this arc are apparent and nothing ruins the pacing because it only lasts 3 episodes. The characters in the show have always been unique and quirky, and what's noteworthy in this story arc is not only their uniqueness in presentation, but also their decision making. I think we all know that anime is often guilty of creating the most generic characters known to humans. Mob Psycho, along with other shows like Odd Taxi, make it exciting because characters react differently to their environment. So, for example, Teruki is the first to recognize that the cult members who are giving out these candies are using them as a means of mind controlling people. So, how does he react? He rushes into the broccoli to confront the culprit. On the other hand, Reagan copes with the fact that everyone around him is getting mind controlled by conforming to the behavior of the masses. Due to the overwhelming change in behavior around him, he bends to the group's attitudes and beliefs, which is to worship the broccoli. This conformity rises from a desire to fit in and be accepted, fear of rejection or punishment for deviating from the norm. In Reagan's case, he fears punishment more than needing acceptance to the point he stops pushing back on the cultists and tries to convince Mob to do the same. And the reason he acts this way makes sense given his past as a con artist. On the other hand, Tsubomi is an antithesis of Reagan, as she is seen to not conform or bend to her surroundings at all. This arc uses the character's unique traits to explore themes of conformity and individuality in a way that is not often seen in anime. So it's refreshing to see characters with different perspectives and reactions to the same problem, and it adds depth to the show. Since the arc revolves around Mob and Dimple, it is important to understand how their dynamic plays out. What is impressive is that the points of conflict between the protagonist and the antagonist are intuitive and interesting. Both Dimple and Mob have external and internal needs. Mob's external need is to restore the town to normal by removing the broccoli. Dimple's external need is to become a god by controlling the people of the city, using the broccoli's powers. Mob and Dimple, having opposing external needs, put them in physical conflict with each other. This is a rudimentary method of creating conflict, and we have seen it before in Season 1 and 2 where Mob fights Claw and their leader Suzuki. What makes this arc interesting is actually witnessing the clash between Mob's and Dimple's internal needs. Earlier in the season, Mob started to develop a sense of overconfidence and self-importance. This was a result of wanting validation and recognition, which was shattered when he realized that the people around him did not hold him as high a regard as he believed. This is evident when the journalist girl, Mezato, and club girl Kurata loses interest in him after realizing he won't be leading the Psycho Helmet cult, and when Reagan questions his leadership abilities.
すっかり忘れてたわ。
忘れてたって。
集会の前日に幹部会議があってね。そこにふらっと現れたのよ。本物の教祖様が。
え？
あ、いや、どうして土壇場で忘れちゃったんだか。
こいつが教祖になるなら残念だがもうモブの出る幕はなさそうだな。まあもういいか。まともだお前はそういうタイプじゃないしな。
Therefore, Mob's internal need is to regain his lost confidence, and he believes he can achieve that by confronting the leader of the Psycho Helmet cult, kind of the source of all his problems. Dimple's internal need is almost the same as Mob's in that what he truly wants is not to be a god, which we will later find out, but validation and recognition. And he was seeking those feelings in Mob. When Mob and Dimple confront each other, their internal desires create a moral conflict because both value each other as friends and do not want to harm each other. This is evident when they try to justify their own actions and try to convince the other why their approach is wrong instead of solely resorting to a physical battle. The dialogue absolutely peaks when Dimple justifies his actions by making three major points. Firstly, he argues that brainwashing simplifies everything, relieves everyone's pain, and gives them purpose, much like a religion. This parallel to real-world religion and the arguments for it is an underlying discussion that adds depth to their encounter. Secondly, Dimple claims that his brainwashing only affects people's beliefs and not their personalities or lifestyles. Lastly, he argues that society already imposes norms and laws on people, so why is his order any different? Mob counters each of these arguments, and their exchange is both entertaining and thought-provoking. Dimple's internal need to convince Mob drives the conversation, and even in the end, he does not want to fight Mob, but rather wants him to understand, and this is important.
これでやっと話ができる。ほら、やっぱりエクボは信頼できる。
え？信頼？
The execution of Dimple's death solidifies this arc as one of the most memorable. It works exceptionally well due to the availability of the necessary tools required to make a good redemption arc, including a well-crafted backstory, meaningful character interactions, a clear and compelling motivation, and realistic consequences. We're aware of Dimple's past and subsequent role as the show's mascot for all three seasons, as well as his relationships with other characters like Reagan, Mob, and Cherokee. Dimple desires to take over the world and views himself as a god because he can control people using the powers of the broccoli. Dimple's redemption begins when his moral conflict with Mob makes him realize his internal need to be recognized and acknowledged, especially by Mob. Once Dimple reaches his goal, he realizes that the validation he sought all this time is not genuine or earned, because he's forcing people to worship him, right? Which contradicts his old beliefs and undermines his goal of controlling people.
自分が中心の世界が手に入る。ほとんど計画通りの神になったようなものなのに、いまいち面白くねえ。認められたい。自分の存在を。かっこ笑いの件の後、こいつは霊である俺を認識した。怖がらず、煙たがらず、結局こいつは俺様を受け入れた。
This realization helps him experience a lot of growth, and he recognizes Mob as a true friend. The character interaction between the two slowly builds up, giving context to why Dimple thinks the way he does. Their interaction leads to Mob sacrificing his powers to prevent physical confrontation. We learn that Mob deeply values Dimple as a friend and that Dimple is capable of introspection and a lot of change, to the point of wanting to give up his plans for world domination. Throughout this arc, multiple elements are utilized to build Dimple's character. As a result, the audience experiences an incredible emotional payoff when Dimple selflessly sacrifices himself to protect Mob. This impactful moment works so well because it showcases the new, wholesome friendship and respect that Dimple and Mob develop for each other, only to take it away. The contrast in emotions that the audience feels, going from feeling happy about this realization of friendship to being confronted by Dimple's inevitable death, is what makes his death so well done. A good redemption arc is crucial in stories because it provides closure and resolution for the character's journey. It demonstrates their capability for change and growth, even if they started out as a flawed character. In the case of Dimple, his death serves as a powerful conclusion to his story, solidifying his transformation from an antagonist to a sympathetic and relatable character. The impact of his death on the audience is therefore long-lasting, as it leaves a profound impression on their emotions.